Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video. I know it's been a while. A lot of things has changed. Me and my wife just had our newborn son. Currently he's about a month old, so it's been hectic for us, but just learning how to adjust so I can get back on YouTube and just make more videos for you guys and more tips. But today's video is going to be about 8 tips on how to make your video more cinematic. We, as videographers or photographers, we're always trying to improve our content. But sometimes maybe we didn't go to school for this or to become, in this profession, or maybe we're a hobbyist that wants to take it a little bit more serious and go to the next level. And so I want to be able to provide you with 8 insight ways that can help you guys improve your content and be able to make some cinematic videos that maybe somebody will hire you for it. Tip number 1 is all about frame rates. Understanding frame rates. So we have 23.976 is like the industry standard for what's called like a cinematic film. Then we also have 60 frames per second, where you have a lot more images and everything combined that's taken per second, so that allows you to slow it down. You have a little bit more of slow motion. Then you also have 120 frames per second that just allows you to have even more frames. You're able to slow it down and really get some dramatic and cinematic type of shots per se, but it's really just slow motion shots. So those are really the frame rates. Now, when to use these frame rates, it actually all depends on the film that you're trying to illustrate. So for example, here in this shot, I'm actually shooting in 60 frames per second, the entire clip. The reason I chose 60 frames is because if I want to slow it down, I can, and I can make it look even more dramatic. For the most part, I really left it at 60 frames per second in a 23.976 timeline on Adobe Premiere. So that just allows it to be in that time frame, in that sequence code, but I can still slow it down if I need to make the shot a little bit more dramatic, or maybe if I need to extend it more just so it can be on beat with the music. I have that extra cushion there. So I like to shoot in 60 frames per second for that reason. Again, everything really depends on the story you're trying to tell. And is it going to help you, or is it not going to help you? If you want everything to have a real raw and an emotional feel, and you want to have that good motion blur and everything just really come out right, then 23.976 is really the way to go to as well. So again, everything just depends. But I want you guys to understand your frame rates so that when you're in that situation, what do I use? And in order to do that, I suggest you guys go out and collab, do shoots with people or with things or whatever you have, so that you can experiment. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is learning how to follow the shutter rule. And what I mean about that is, like right now I'm actually shooting in 23.976, so my shutter speed should really be around like 48. That's what my shutter speed should be, 1/48 of a second. But currently it's at 240, so when I move, I really don't get any motion blur. The reason for that, why I'm breaking the rule, even though I'm suggesting you to follow the rule, is because I don't have an ND filter just yet for this lens that I'm using right now. And so for that reason, I have to bump up my shutter speed so I can keep my ISO low and my aperture low, so I can have some depth behind me. So the reason I'm breaking the rule, besides just not having ND filters, because I'm sitting down, I'm pretty still. So I can kind of get away with that. But when you're filming live action subjects at this frame rate, and your shutter speed should be double what your frame rate is, then you should be, if you want to maintain that depth of field and your ISO is already low, then that's when you want to have an ND filter or a variable ND filter so that you can adjust accordingly and you're able to have that motion blur. So when I actually shoot or do productions, I do follow the frame rate rules, and I do use an ND filter and I follow my shutter speed. So that's just a really quick tip for you guys, is to learn how to follow that, because you can use that motion blur just to enhance the scene and what's going on. Now, when I shoot over 60 frames per second, I don't follow the rule. The reason is because I'm already in a high shutter speed. I'm not going to get motion blur either way, no matter if it's 120 frames per second at 240th of a second for my shutter speed. It's not going to matter, but it does matter when you're shooting in that lower frame rate, because you want to maintain that motion blur. Because if it's too high, then it's going to be shaky, especially if you're shooting handheld. It's not going to look right. So just keep that in mind. That's tip number 2. Tip number 3. Tip number 3 is probably the most important tip that you can get, is learning how to expose. When you learn how to expose properly, you're just able to have the freedom of have a really good image. Just like when you take a photo, you want to make sure that your subject is exposed properly, that you can see some of the features, the background is not crazy blown out. So in this case is learning how to expose properly. So this actually ties into another tip later on, but if you shoot in a log profile, it allows your camera and your sensor to get the most dynamic range in your highlights and in your shadow, so that you can retain both of them. So right now I'm actually shooting log and f-log with my Fuji, and I am exposing myself here currently. I'm trying to expose properly here for this side of the windows, so I can at least have some details. It's a little bit blown out, but I can still, most of it's mostly properly focused. So we're not perfect, and there is limitations to cameras, what it can and cannot do. But what I'm actually gonna do is try to adjust this even more perfect. I do have a light in front of me, so I can come out even more. So I'm going ahead and adjust this real quick for you guys so that you're able to see what a properly exposed image in this scenario should be like. So right now in this sense, I went ahead and exposed properly for here for the windows, but now I'm dark. So how do I overcorrect this? Well, when you have a light I have here in front of me, I'm just gonna bump it up and I'm just gonna see if it's gonna expose me properly or not. So let me go ahead and check on that and see if I can get something right. All right guys, so here we have a properly exposed image. The image you were seeing prior to the other 2 tips was not properly exposed. This part right here was all blown out, and now it's not, and I'm still in focus. What did I do? Well, I went ahead and adjusted my shutter speed accordingly. I know I didn't follow the rule because I don't have an ND filter, so my next thing was, all right, I have to up my shutter speed. I want to keep the same aperture f2.8, and in this sense, I went ahead and boosted my light because I became dark again, and then I had to bump up my ISOs just to get me to the level where I need to be, but also making sure that I don't overexpose the window as well. So learning how to use either your shutter speed, your aperture, or any lighting that you have in accessories will help you get in a properly exposed image. So here, this is an example here of an indoor setting. Here's an example of an outdoor setting where everything is just really properly exposed as it should, and everything just really looks nice. So that's just an example there. Tip number 4 really ties into tip number 3, is being able to shoot in a log profile if possible. If your camera has log, I recommend you guys to shoot in log. They say that log is very hard to actually edit or to color correct or do these things. It's true if you don't know how to. Luckily, you're watching my YouTube channel, so you'll be able to learn something. Usually, most camera manufacturers have a LUT that brings it back to the Rec 709 spectrum. What that does, it really allows you to see the way how you shot it, and then you're able to apply a LUT or color grade it yourself the way that you want it to. But shooting in log, what helps is retain a lot of information in the shadows and in the highlights, so that your image is just more properly balanced and has all that dynamic range of the sensors being used. So when you have in log, you can really manipulate colors the way that you want it to, have all the information, those details, And that's the biggest reason why you shoot in log, is to be able to have all those things so that in post you can manipulate a lot more of it and have a really great image. So if you guys want to shoot in log, try to shoot in log. If you don't have log in your cameras, then that's when you want to go ahead and adjust your settings in your camera. If you can desaturate the images, if you can lower your highlight the way that your camera reads it, that's a good way to do it. Bump up your shadows a little bit. If your footage come out grainy or comes out thin, get plugins that can help you lower it back down. Like Neat Video can help remove some grain and just smooth it out a bit. Or apply anything effects, or just go with it and use it as a stylistic attribute if the grain actually looks good. So yes guys, that's tip number 4, use log. So now we're actually going into more of the filmmaking type of tips I want to share with you guys. So tip number 5 is tell a story. You want to make sure that what you're creating actually tells a story, whether it's a person just getting up, going out of bed, getting ready for the day and just zones, and then boom, gets a workout in and it's just killing and goes back to work. That right there is telling a story. How can you enhance telling a story? Goes into tip number 6 is finding the right music or sound effects to tell your story. So you have a story, you filmed everything, you got all your angles, you expose, you follow all the rules, everything went well. Well, your film can be crappy and suck if you don't have the right music to help enhance it. The reason why I love videography so much is because you're combining so many elements together to make something look very creative, have your own stylistic touch to it, and separate you from others. If you don't find the right music or find the right sound effects or things to enhance your story, it's not gonna captivate your audience. So guys, that's like super key right there. Find the right music and find the right sound effect to help enhance your story. Peter McKinnon talks all about it all the time. And you probably know who Peter McKinnon is, right? Like, come on, he's only like the biggest hit. But yeah, that's tip number 7. Tip number 8. Tip number 8 is about adding these black bars right here. Bam. It's just something about it that just makes you focus on the image even more, because there's not the extra real estate there. I don't know the right specs to write this, but if you guys want to write something down, if you shoot in 4K or if you shoot in 1080 and that's like your export settings, make sure you set your sequence thing to 38 by 40 by 20 by 1600, 38 by 40 by 1600. And then for if you're exporting in 1080, then it's 1920. I lied. It's if you're exporting in 1080, it's going to be 1080 by 800. And the reason why I say these things is that when you put it in your sequence, it's already going to be in that have those crop already kind of built in. You're not going to see in the timeline in Premiere, but when you export it and you put it in any device, it's already going to have those crops. So you don't have to worry about the black parts going bad or anything of that nature, or looking ugly. It's already going to be there. It's going to be taken care of. So you don't have to worry about anything. So make sure you go ahead and get it and put those numbers in, or just add the black bars in a preset like I'm going to have to do right now, because this is not us I'm not trying to make a cinematic sequence right now. So now it's going to be by what, 3840 by 2160. It's natural frame size that it should be. So just keep that in mind. And the last part is just making sure that you can export your settings properly. My settings, I make sure to render a maximum. I make sure to use 2 VPR around the bottom of Premiere. I'll show you guys like right around here. I put it to the max. I fill it up. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then click export, and should look good. It should look good. All right guys, so just follow these tips. Go out, get your camera, go and create. Stop watching YouTube videos. Watch mine, subscribe to the channel. Like the video down below. If you dislike it, click that button twice. Or just leave a comment for me. I'd love to conversate with you. But if you want to enjoy this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up again. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.